Hey everybody, I'm back. I'm having a harder time writing these this week, so I'm just going to talk them out because that's easier this week. Um, yeah, the wounded feminine and how she shows up, and so kind of like some examples of what that looks like because I was well versed in living in that energy, and unfortunately, a lot of us are. We don't know it because it's just kind of protection. We think, some part of our childhood, we were taught that being feminine is wrong, that it's not safe. We were rejected or abandoned or um, neglected or manipulated. And that safety, that softness, that femininity, that receiving energy, then we associated it with like pain and betrayal, and that it's not safe to receive or not safe to be. So we kind of shut it down. And the feminine protection for that is to then, when the feminine then feels powerless, she tries to take away power from masculine. So a very masculine man. So I in particular was raised by a very kind of toxic masculine, very masculine, traditional, like what we would kind of think as the masculine, which I don't associate it with that now, but at the time, very big, strong men, like that. And it was just his way or the highway. And he didn't want a girl and just all kinds of stuff. I had all these stories, right? I have all these stories. Um, and that kind of energy, I made up stories. I had stories of my childhood about his thoughts, and like money was used to kind of control, and the feminine qualities were not um, appreciated, or um, wasn't safe to express that, and they weren't celebrated. And so I thought it was safer to be more masculine, like to be more man like, to be a man and use my intellect and go out and make things happen, and which are good qualities, and to be strong and independent and not need a man. That's what I was taught, which were, good things. He was coming from a good place because he wanted me to be my own person. And I can see that now. But as a little girl, that didn't feel very good. And so how that shows up is then feeling powerless, and quite literally like having shame about who you are. So I had shame about being a woman. And when we then feel powerless, we try to take away power from when we feel fear. And for me, money was very scary because it was very easily taken away. Like love and support was conditional and used very controlling, and was probably very painful in some aspects to that part of me. And so when we feel that powerlessness, then we want to emasculate. And Alison Armstrong's definition was probably like the literal definition, because she's good about just what is the definition. To emasculate means to diminish somebody's ability to produce results. And anytime we emasculate something or someone, men in particular, we actually also disempower ourselves. And a, a classic example of this, men play for points and they love to provide. They really live for that, actually. And a classic example for me was my husband really tries to be helpful, and before I went through this process and learned these things about myself, like really dove into like these energies and male and female and like how to have better relationships, he would do the dishes. He'd always try to help do the dishes, and he would load the dishwasher, and it used to drive me crazy because I didn't think he was doing it right. So instead of just being grateful that he did the dishes, I would like kind of jokingly like, haha, be like, you really suck at doing dishwasher. And he took longer than I took. And so I just kind of mocked him for doing it instead of being thankful and appreciative. And so that's a huge example of it. And you may think that's like not a big deal, but for a man, that's a very big deal, because if they do something for you and you knock it down, like that's very hurtful to them because they're doing it for you, and you just said, basically fuck off, you know, like, and so anytime that they do something and you criticize it or you pick it apart, instead of just saying thank you are blocking your ability to receive. And it, even not just for men, from anybody. If somebody does something for you and you like kind of half return it like a compliment, you just give it back. Oh, you too. Or instead of thank you, I received that, you know, thank you for doing the dishes. Like, who gives a fuck? The dishes got done, right? But this was like how my brain, like it's how I was taught. It's how my mother acted. No blame or shame to them, but like, that's how I was taught. The woman kind of just nags at the husband all day. Like, you didn't do it right. Why don't you do this? Well, quite honestly, yeah, you can't blame them if they just get nagged all the time. Because when we do that to each other, that works for women's brains. Like, well, don't do it like that, do it like this. That works for us, but that's not how the masculine brain works. So when I started learning that, and then I saw it in sex, like, a man wants to please you. If you don't let a man please you, he's not as satisfied during sex. And then it started dawning on me, like, oh, I totally emasculate money too. Because what do we do with money? Why aren't you there for me? You never show up. You're always, you don't, you know, like, you were scared to spend it because it might not come back. It's like the equivalent of not trusting your husband and not cheat every time he leaves the house. Like, it's never good enough. It doesn't show up how you want it to. You're not appreciating it. It causes you anxiety and stress, and that is repellent energy. It wants to stay away from that energy. The feminine energy, and it's a very hard, it's like hard and edgy. Like, my husband described it for me when I used to be like that. I looked the same physically, but now he says I look soft and beautiful. Even though I look the same, it appears differently to a man. It's like soft. That's how he said it, soft. And that's what is attractive to men, is the softness. That's feminine. That's receiving. That's where you have great sex. But most women, and we don't know it. I didn't know it. We don't know what we don't know. I didn't know I wasn't being soft. I was like, how am I not being a woman? I'm a woman. But I was coming off very edgy and not receiving and not able to, like, be. It wasn't safe, and I had sexual trauma, and I've had men break my heart, and boys do. And we start just kind of closing off, and that beautiful space where it actually feels really good is now hardened and protected. And so, you know, when we show up like that, it's not attractive to them. And when we can stop. So how do you turn this around? You appreciate money, even though it's not perfect. You appreciate how it's currently showing up for you. Whatever your husband is currently doing for you, or your boyfriend, or any masculine, your son, just appreciate what they do. Don't look at what they're not doing. Just appreciate them. Like, that one thing turns so much around. I mean, there's a lot that goes into this. Like, I dug into my wounds. I dug into my daddy wounds, my masculine wounds, like everything about men that I didn't think, like, all the things, like, I dug in there and dissected them and, like, alchemized them so that I could land here finally. And so in that journey, one of the biggest things is to look at you know, this place, this soft place of appreciation, and being so thankful for this particular energy and how it shows up for you. If someone gives you a compliment, if someone opens the door, if someone pays you, if someone is nice to you or smiles at you, it's just simply receiving it openly. Open is the feminine energy. Open, soft, and it's not weak. It's actually really powerful. And you know, it's like water. Water is soft, but it's hella powerful also. And when you can find that place within you and start letting your walls down and your guards down and start choosing to trust men and start choosing to know that you're safe. Like, start choosing to know that in your power you are safe. Like, it's in all these little choices, and then choosing to not emasculate anyone. And what I think I found most profound for myself was that if we emasculate others, we also emasculate ourselves in the doing so of. Because if I'm critiquing him about the dishwasher, you better believe I was critiquing myself about everything. Like, why didn't you do it better? Da, 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 da. And I'm diminishing my own ability to just produce results by being so critical of myself instead of just self-accepting, right? So it's the inner matches the outer, and by changing the outer, you therefore can change the inner. Like, how you're being with others, you start being that way to yourself also. So this was like life-changing for me, and this is what turned my life around. And so I started digging deeper into it, and I have learned things from other teachers. Alison Armstrong's fabulous, and her book The Queen's Code was really life-changing for me. It put to words what I had been experiencing. So like I read it after the fact, and it was like, oh, that's how I did it. And so that helped me a lot. So I would totally recommend you check out the book. But those changing your perception of men and money, and not emasculating them anymore is like profound for a woman. And it does require some emotional and spiritual work to get there, because the wounded feminine is wounded. Like, she's got some stories that she needs to clear out before she can land in her power. And that's what I help women do, is land in that femininity so they can show up the money dominatrix with money, because she needs to be a badass, powerful woman in her business, and a soft, receptive, turned on woman in her marriage. That's who I help you become. So yeah, and that takes cultivating trust in yourself and looking at your shit and dancing in your shadows and doing erotic alchemy. And the result is mind-blowing sex and better relationships with all the men in your life, family members, boyfriends, husbands, partners, sons. And it ripples out into your relationships with women. I like had a big sisterhood wound too. As if I was just, if you're closed, you're closed, right? And so in looking at my relationships to the masculine, I was also able to heal my relationship to the feminine and to other females and to the feminine within myself. So yeah, that's how she shows up, this wound. And it's so healing that and coming from this powerful place. Thank you to those who have joined. And if you have questions or comments, let me know if you're catching the replay. Do you guys have questions about how the wounded feminine shows up? She won't show up safe to Petya and I talked about this morning. She's not going to show up safe during sex and trust. And then she's not going to open, and she's not going to have these life-changing orgasms. So it's going to show up in sex. It's going to show up in money. It's not fully receiving. And that might look like getting money, but then immediately spending it or saving it, and then it goes away, like you're not able to hold it. And it shows up in relationships for sure. Instead of, we kind of poo-poo on our sexual attraction when we are in a wounded feminine place, because we're not in that deep, dark feminine space, and we're really polarized to the bright masculine sun space. And so it's like the wounded comes in and then meets a wounded, and now there's not polarity. There's not sexual polarity. So we lose a lot of that, desire in our relationships when we respond from a wounded place. And that requires working on our trust within ourselves, and then like being able to quite literally just be and trust and be soft and receptive and know that we're safe in that. So yeah, this is like a major thing that I teach with women, so that they can show up powerfully as a woman, and not powerful controlling, because control is not power. So all of that controlling of men that shows up, that's not power. That's a form of the wounded feminine. She controls. The powerful feminine does not control men. You love with an open hand, and that's actually can be quite terrifying when you're used to trying to white knuckle everything, right, and control. But that actually attracts the love that you want, is that kind of powerful, receptive trust. So I hope that helps kind of clear up like what I talk about. And this is why sex and money are so intricately linked, because they are. And you know, the feminine wants to be safe and loved and provided for and like held, and then the masculine, you know, seeks to be appreciated, so that he provides and he wants to be appreciated for that. So it's this dance, and like living in your energy, in your primary energy, is magical, quite honestly. Like it's a very different space when you're used to showing up from your old stories. So a couple ways you can work on this is, again, just noticing. Be aware of where you're controlling. Be aware of where you're critical instead of appreciative, with yourself, men or money. And pleasure starts next week. So my course on the wealthy and well-fucked woman is all about these wounds, like the emotional and spiritual side, and then the physical side of having amazing sex and better relationships with men. And then you can also work with me one-on-one, so that men and money show up differently for you, because they do. They show up differently for a woman truly in her power, as opposed to coming from a wounded and controlling place. So have a happy afternoon, you guys. What is today? Thursday? Happy Thursday. It's August. Woohoo! I think August is going to be pretty powerful, you guys. So let me know that you guys watched this, got something out of it. That would be great. And I will talk to you later.